the topic that we have for today is 5 ways how AI and machine learning affect education and the future of diversity. So let's talk about how AI ML has changed the education sector in recent years.
Okay, so basically, I put several things, and on one hand, I would love to reflect what I see in terms of trends and my personal perspective as an educator in person who involved in making AI works in different places. So the first thing I would love to mention is transition from students to creators. I mentioned it even before adaptive learning, predictive stuff, less bias stuff, because it's the first time in the whole history their classroom actually involved in interactive process of creation. I mean, using of robotics, using of builders boxes and different stuff educators use today in order to involve students in actual process, not just learning to code, not just making
Right.
some stuff, but actually get some result. And in most cases, it involves using of AI, specifically when we use, for instance, robotics for people with neurodiverse issues. The second thing is adaptive learning, and it's really related to my personal story as well, because in my past, I had a neurodiverse, and I still have a neurodiverse condition, and I experienced significant issues in order to learn, specifically how to remember things through listening. It was hard for me. Adaptive
Right.
learning actually helps students to pick classes, a way to learn, teachers in more personalized way, and a significant thing. First thing is a predictive career paths. In the past, we had a school and have some, we have a universities and jobs. And actually there was no connection. And many people who are graduated from universities, we go to nowhere. It was a problem. Currently, AI help us to use more personalized approach through adaptive learning to actually prediction of your career path and chemistry, physics, business, entrepreneurship, engineering, and it helps you to find your way much earlier. Specifically, even if you're just a student, you already have some vision what you are ready to do, your skills, your talent. Other thing is a less bias in grading and how teachers evaluate students. In the past, before AI, we have a significant issues in terms of a subjective evaluation of some students, specifically the relationship between a particular teacher and particular students were not really good. And it led some problems with grading and some students with not really good behavior. We had a worse grades just because we had no good relationship with teachers. Now we have a less bias in grading. It's really up to results, to your accomplishments through classes, through exams, and in most of cases, it's provided through online or flipping classroom model. Another thing is a better logistic between teachers and students with what I call collaborative learning or teachers on demand. AI help us to make, in most cases, students have some preferences in terms of the teachers we would love to work with because we have some preferences in terms of the classes,
Yeah.
studies, or uh, personal favorites. So AI help you to pick and create your own classroom. For instance, I would love to work with particular professors or teachers, and as a kind of my favorites, and I work with them. And it's create more personalized logistic. At the same time, it help you to schedule your classes in advance without any paperwork, completely through online format. It's a very convenient, very quick way. And it's really make classes not only more personalized and better for students, it make it more efficient in terms of economy, in terms of expense of some paperwork, because based on statistic, significant time teachers spend not only on teaching, but paperwork on bureaucracy. The last thing I would like to mention was what I call global classes. Um, I would say that what's what we would love to bring to the reality in the next years. Currently, it's still far from actually implementation, but with what we are able to bring to reality in the next years. And it's about to using what's what I call like-minded ecosystems. It's when we are able to create online experiences between the whole countries, cities, in order to create a collaborative experiences for like-minded students. Moreover, data science and machine learning help us to define relevant students to pick them together. For instance, in 2012, I work on algorithms would help to define like-minded people across the whole globe based on particular channels or the whole social media. And we can do the same stuff for your educational scores, for your educational behavior, in order to create global like-minded classes between ecosystems, between universities, institutions. So it's a kind of the main things I see today in terms of how machine learning affects education.
Yeah, so you mentioned that AI helps to introduce personalized learning in the classrooms. So how does it link to making global classrooms available?
Yes, in order to make classes efficient, we need not just connect some classes around the world, some people around the world. We need to gather information about particular students in order to pair them based on particular scores, talents, interest. And in this way, for instance, we can create a global chemistry classes or a global girls chemistry classes, or and you will be able to apply to particular class in order to be involved not just in learning process but in particular experiences, because it's a kind of a club model, because sometimes people would love to be involved in something funny than just learning with like-minded people from other countries with different experiences in order to bring to the table. And basically, machine learning help us to gather information about people, screen it, and create collaborative chains in order to actually bring it to the kind of a global class through online platforms.
Right, right. So do you think like diversity, neurodiversity is the biggest challenge when it comes to exploring the geniuses?
Is a very good question, and I would start with my personal story and quick
Sure.
overview. Um, I had and I still have a multiple sclerosis, and I have an autism spectrum and neurodiverse spectrum, and it led to the issue to learning for listening, memory, and emotional parts of a learning process, specifically communication with teachers, communication with the other students. And 30, 14 years old, I felt myself completely dumb. And I thought I had no any perspective. But after that, I started to experiment with writing, journalism, and learning on my own. And I explored that I need to put information in particular data sets, particular logic would help me to remind it better. And for instance, I learned what I need to repeat some information 5 or 6 times, and it works for me. And I need to particular pace, and it worked for me. And in this way, I learned curriculum of a Harvard, Stanford, MIT, in different kind of open universities, and it helped me to become an entrepreneur and sold my first company in 18 years old. Before, I was completely out of life. I was a loser, and was how it worked for me. And I
And,
believe
and
there
then
are
you
many
founded
people,
a company at 18 years old.
18 years old, yes. And
Wow.
up to this age, I was an author over 100 articles, technical articles. I work with organizations around the world. I used, for instance, I explored that live communication is hard for me, but my letters, my using of the content work well for me. And I use it actively across my personal life, professional life, and at the same time my passion to monotonous work. For instance, I could study tons of information over the day. It's really make me incredibly efficient in this way, because I could just spend 20 hours in a row just gathering some information, reaching some companies, because I love monotonous work. I don't need communication. And in this way, for instance, we have companies like Divergent that help people with autism to connect occupation in data science. And based on statistics, we're able to perform equally and sometimes even more efficient way than healthy ones, at least in this particular type of occupation and process, because people with autism have a specific talent and attitude to numbers, statistic, data accumulation,
Right.
analysis. And in this way, through personalized platforms, workflow, recruiting process, we're actually able to pick some talent. At the same time, based on today's statistic, over 85% of people with the autism spectrum unemployed. We have no any job, or they have some kind of a part-time job. So
That's
is
a
it?
startling statistic.
Yes, I checked it several times, and it's huge. It's
Yeah.
based on both UK, US, so it's a pretty similar for Europe and United States. And basically, what's why we see so huge growth of um, niche workflow platforms. For instance, there is another company called Ultranauts. It's focused on the occupation for people with autism in engineering. And once again, it is a huge opportunity. And it's not only for people with a neurodiversity, it's about people with a visual impairment, speech impairment, hearing impairment, because we have companies would have a personalized hearing equipment and devices would help people to hear better. We have a stuff for people with speech and visual impairment. So we're able to actually provide them with a socialization and adaptation and actually compete with society. So I believe, yes, it's a huge opportunity in terms of finding talent, because it's incredibly hard working people. Most of them a bit depressed, sometimes not a bit, but they're actually looking for opportunity. We're ready to work hard. We're ready
Yeah.
to adapt it to this world. We just need some kind of more personalized tools, platforms, learning, healthcare. That's all. So it's really about ecosystem and appropriate environment. And I believe we could find many, many talent across these people.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe it's an area with immense potential to explore, and definitely more companies should be doing that. So, also, if you were to sum it up in like a few short, concise sentences, why do you think diversity is vital to AI's success?
Yes, it's a good question. Um, and I would love to mention several things. I would start with um, my point of view as a social scientist, because my first education related to social science, and after that I jumped to my technology work and exploration nowadays. Firstly, while we think that we made a significant jump in social mobility in latest decade, based on statistic, actually it's not. So we still have a huge gap between talent and opportunity. So actually, when we have an AI that's able to provide an equal access and evaluation of talent on every level of the classroom, universities, workplaces, we're
Mm-hmm.
able to build what's called economy of accomplishment. So
Right.
your success, you succeed not because you're a black or white, you have more or less resources, but because you have a particular working attitude, passion, and talent. And AI help us to make it more or less create diverse ecosystem, and it's provide us with a better perspective and result in terms of a social mobility. Um, Second thing, with what we already mentioned, it's related to narrow diversity and minorities in people who are completely unpresented in today professional workflow and learning. So we need AI with able to be personalized for different kinds of people. So that's why we build, for instance, speech recognition with people with some particular issues with the speech. We built different kinds of AI stack depending on talent, cases, institutions, communities, in order to involve um, every part of the talent across the different ecosystem. This next thing is a facial recognition bias. Um, I'm not a it's not kind of my main expertise, but I talked a lot with the expert who related to this question. And based on statistic, we still have a 20% errors for women. So in most cases, AI is not able to recognize a woman's face, and it make mistake and recognize it as a man. And we have a 30% error and mistakes of AI for women and men of color. So
Yeah.
it's still a pretty open question. And I believe it's a question not only in terms of technology, but also open question about genders. We have in society, we still have no consent about what we consider men, women, non-binary. We still growing in terms of our understanding of the whole pattern of people, genders, sexual and human rights. So
Absolutely.
technology, it's really about criteria we use in order to define the whole range of individuals. And the last thing is related to the previous point is the criteria issues. In order to build AI that provide us with social mobility, with equal participation of different kinds of social groups, with the lack of the absence of a facial recognition bias, we need a very clear criteria regarding everything. What is a talent? What is a successful student? How we define what exam were successfully passed? What is a talented students? We still have enough questions to answer, because in the past, for instance, we defined talent through IQ test. But nowadays, we also evaluate emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
communication ability, and we need define which criteria we actually need for every individual. And I had a discussion about 1 week ago, And we thought that we need much more collaboration of social scientists and data scientists, because we actually see the situation when people from technology world just make products and social scientists and um, what I call fuzzies, more involved in different world. And we need more collaboration, because social scientists should bring more clarity about genders, talent, skills, what is a diversity, what is a correct inclusion, because technology, it's a very concrete thing. We have a technology guy and I have a text for them, and I need to clarify which particular criteria we have, because otherwise it will never work correct.
Yeah, exactly. There needs to be more collaboration, and the two fields can greatly help each other.
Yes.
Yeah, so you talked about AI bias. So what are its implications exactly for cybersecurity's diversity problem then?
As I said before, it's not kind of my main expertise, but basically it's happened that we still have no particular clarity regarding men, women face, the whole diversity of faces of different kinds of individuals. Current research is mostly based on studies regarding Amazon, and I believe they really lack enough of testing on different kinds of individuals. And that's why, for instance, we actually promote diversity. In order to make a product that work for diverse individuals, we need diverse beta testers, diverse pattern of people who involved in actually building of products. For instance, products for Amazon and facial recognition. So yes, this problem exists, and some people actually suffered for this, including when they were not correctly recognized, and they even had some problems with police. Yes, but again, it's not kind of my main expertise, and I just
Sure, yeah.
can't talk about the diversity problem here.
Yeah, so coming to the ethical side of things, what are some of the data ethic concerns and ideas behind it?
Yes. Basically, I would mention five main concerns and problems we have today, but hopefully we actually solve it very quickly, both on the level of companies and technologies, and hopefully on the level of cities, governors, and basically in Europe and the US, governors are aware perfectly about this problem. So the first thing is a data ownership. Um, Maybe you know and remember the scandal with Cambridge Analytica and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
in the situation with Facebook. This problem exists and it's real. In most cases, companies, organization, institution possess your information, and it's not even about technology companies. Since the first days, then universities exist, hospital exist. We always collect your records and your data, and they keep it, your medical information. So one of the key things we do today is the decentralization, is the creation of the open source platforms would help to decentralize your information since the beginning. So when you became a patient or you became a student, no matter what kind of information this organization pick from you, it's still your data, and it's collected
Right.
in open
Yeah.
source platforms. So this organization is not an agent or intermediary in this process. They just collect it and upload to this open source platform, and you completely own this information. And it's a crucial thing. Second thing is a data privacy and security. I believe it's a huge problem. While many blockchain companies and open source organizations state that we're completely secure, that there is no any problem, I believe we face many issues here, because while we built many platforms to solve data ownership platform, we still have a pretty different algorithms and different approaches to building these platforms. We have a whole competition on blockchain market, for instance, and we have no idea what kind of challenges and problems a particular company or platform have. So it's still a kind of open questions. We need more information how it actually work and what kind of security methods we use. So I
Absolutely.
believe at some point we will need to come up with more unification for any kind of an open source platform we have, because currently they are very optimistic about this, but I don't believe in it.
Right.
As a person who was involved in this area many years, I believe we need many efforts in terms of unification standards, both in the European Union and the United States. The next thing is a developer ethic. For instance, you can found that there is a course at MIT that dedicated to developer ethic. What's how engineers, AI developers, and people who involved in building machine learning or working with data actually um, uh, what kind of attitude they have to his work, because we have a particular rule. Any engineer, he's not the owner, he's not even intermediary, he's just a coder. So this guy
Right.
just make a work. So it's a kind of a ethic we have at every level, no matter we work with the subcontractors or our own developers. It's completely reflected on every level of the tasks, sprints, and development process. And every developer, even if it's intern and some young person, should be aware of that you have no any right on this data and this information. And with ethic, we try to promote across every ecosystem, every level, even in hackathon level, than just when young people or students build robotics or some stuff for fun. Um, the next thing I mentioned before, and we discussed it, is a criteria of the system. So as I said before, we still have an open question about which criteria we put for different kinds of talent, of skills, because it's not so hard to record your data, but it's actually open question which criteria we pick for a high communication level, high IQ, and mathematics skills. So it's still up to people. It's not up to machine. It's up to people to define what's a successful student. And the last thing is a regulation and citizen education. Specifically, when we're talking about not adults, but when we're talking about students, in most cases at school level, when we're building flipping classroom, open classroom, um, in most cases, parents are responsible for kids, and parents should be aware about which information they provide about this their kid, and they should be aware about law, rights, and data ethic as well. So it's about equal understanding of rules in terms of both developers, but also in terms of the citizens, because I believe in the future we'll see many open documents you will need to sign in your social network at schools, that you provide this data, and you can restrict, for instance, some data about you if you want. And I believe it's specifically true for Europe. Europe had a very tough data privacy law, and they promote idea or more selective data gathering. Then you have a right to keep some information not open for a collection. So
Okay.
it's really
Yeah.
about education of citizens. So you have a choice. You can give all information and or save some particular data if you want. and it's about education of kids as well.
Right. Yeah, so thanks, Yana. That kind of wraps up our session for today. Thank you so much for your insights.
Sure. Thank you so much. It was a really good, and have a beautiful day.